Hi everyone! In this video, I'm going to be showing how to mix acrylic paint mixtures in a green color palette for fluid acrylic pouring. But I'm going to be doing something a little bit different than I usually do. Instead of using floetrol as my pouring medium, I'm trying out this Golden GAC 800. So my ultimate plan actually is to try out 4 different pouring mediums in this same green color palette, and then I will compare and have pros and cons for each of them. In this video, I will talk a little bit about the pros and cons I find with the GAC 800 for fluid pouring, but in an upcoming video, I will have a more detailed comparison and rating of all the pouring mediums I try. But for now, let's mix up this green color palette, starting with our main color, which is going to be a beautiful deep forest green. So I added in some phthalo blue to that pouring medium, and now I'm going in with some cadmium yellow in a deep hue. And I do like my green to be a little bit more dark, so I'm going to add in just a tiny bit of the black acrylic paint. Normally, I would go ahead and add in some water when I'm using floetrol, but I haven't used this GAC 800. I'm not sure what consistency it's going to be. So I'm going to start by mixing it without water, and I'll see if it even requires any. So that green is looking lovely. That is the exact shade of a nice dark forest green I was looking for. Let's test out that consistency. So I'm just going to lift up my mixing stick here and let the paint drip down. And that consistency is looking great for pouring. It's not too thin, it's not too thick. So the GAC 800 does not require any water. Doing about a 50-50 mix of the paint and the medium, it's already the perfect consistency. So that's definitely a plus. And now we have our main color. Let's move on to the 4 accent colors. So first up, I'm going to do a beautiful, vibrant aqua blue. I've done this color before, but let's do it again. It looks great with the forest green. I'm just adding in some white acrylic paint there. And then I'll go back in with my go-to phthalo blue. And I like the aqua to be nice and vibrant. So I'm going to use a vibrant yellow, the primary yellow. This yellow can overpower quite easily, so I'm just going to start with a very small amount and I'll adjust as needed after. So let's get to mixing up this shade here, and we'll see if it's the right color. So it's actually looking a little too green. That's more of a Tiffany blue. I want it to be slightly more blue. So I'm just going to add in a little bit more of the phthalo blue. This will just look like a slight adjustment, but I'm really picky with my very particular shades. So sometimes it takes me quite a while to adjust and get that perfect color. But that is more what I was going for. That will balance out the forest green nicely. And look, it's the perfect consistency. So our aqua blue is done. Let's move on to the next color. Now I have mixed this color a few times before in my previous videos, but it is just such a versatile color. So I'll be making the periwinkle blue again. You can see I'm using this giant container of white acrylic paint. I use so much white paint when mixing my colors, probably more than all my other colors combined. So to save a little bit of money, I cheap out a bit on my white and black acrylic paint and just buy the bulk containers. I have tried buying cheaper versions of the different colors, but I find they're just not nearly as vibrant as I like. So for the colors, I stick to the Liquitex basics. And for the black and white, I buy whatever big bulk container I can get. So back to our periwinkle blue here. It is done. Great consistency. That was a mix of the phthalo blue and the deep violet. All right, on to our 4th color. So our color palette's looking a little light so far. need to balance out that deep green. And to do so, I'm going to make a deep turquoise. I'm actually using the same colors I used to make that forest green, the phthalo blue and the cadmium yellow, but I'm using more blue than yellow this time. And I do want this to be the darkest shade, so we'll add about that much black. As I dipped the black in there, I realized this is not a lot of paint. That's going to be way too much black. So I'm just scooping some out there, and that should do it. So now we'll just mix that up. And I can see that would have been way too dark if I kept that black in there. It's also looking a little more navy blue than the turquoise color I was going for. So I'm going to go ahead and add in a bit more of the cadmium yellow, since I need this color to pull a little more green. And again, these adjustments might look very slight, especially with my lighting, but it's important to me to get that exact shade that I'm thinking of in my head. So that's much better. We got a little more of a green undertone. And our other dark color is complete. So now let's move on to our fifth and final shade for this green color palette. Now I need to balance out all of these vibrant colors with a more neutral shade. And since the forest green is the focus of this palette, I'm going to choose a neutral shade that I think looks fantastic next to that forest green. It's also one of my favorite neutral shades, and that is a nice camel tan. So I've added in the burnt umber brown, and now I'm just adding in some raw sienna. And then lastly, I'm adding in some yellow oxide. Not as vibrant as that primary yellow, and I don't like my neutral shades to be very vibrant, so the yellow oxide is the way to go. Now I will mix it up and see if it's the correct color. And it is, but it is very, very thick, especially compared to the other 4 mixtures. Yeah, that's way too thick for pouring. I have a bit of the GAC 800, so I'm going to add that in and see if that will do the trick to thin it out a little bit. I can tell as I'm mixing it that it is still way too thick. So I'm going to go ahead and add in the remainder of the GAC 800 and see if I can get this to the consistency it needs to be. That's pretty much the entire 8-ounce tube. So hopefully that will do the trick. And it does not. That's still too thick for pouring. So I'm gonna have to add some water to this mixture. Just add a little splash of water and mix it up again. Now the consistency is looking closer to the other 4 colors. So our camel neutral is done, and we have our green color palette here. You can see all these accent colors look great with our forest green. So now let's layer these cups to pour. So I have my cup ready to layer, and as I'm looking at all of these colors together, it's looking a little too colorful for my taste. So I'm actually going to steal some of that base layer, the cream color, and mix that in with the 5 colors. I do have about 6 ounces of that cream mixture, which is enough to cover the 12 by 16 oval canvas. So I can take a little bit for the layering to lighten up this palette. I want this pour to have nice thin lines, so I'm only pouring a small amount of each color at a time, just layering them slowly one on top of the other. I'm also trying to balance out the neutrals with the dark shades with the light shades, so you can really see some nice contrast in the pour. And I'm layering the colors directly on top of each other that I find go really well together. So the camel I like with the cream, so I'm going to layer those one on top of the other. Now, unfortunately, that camel color, it turns out it was too thick. You'll see as I pour it and in the final results that it unfortunately disappears. which is too bad because that's such a nice neutral shade that went so well with this colorful palette. I'm almost done this cup here. I do like to leave a little space at the top. And now I'm finishing the second cup. I poured it the same way, so it didn't show the whole pour. But there we have our 2 cups. They're ready to pour. Now, I poured out my base layer already. I show that in a previous video. So I'm just going to start by layering on the colors now. I'm just doing some nice swirls right down the center. I don't want to do anything too crazy or experimental with this pour since the GAC 800 was so expensive. I'm going to stick to what I know. So I have my swirl down the middle, and now I'm just adding lines to each side. And I'm being mindful not to waste any paint. I'm not concerned about the edges and how they look. I know as it spreads out, it will all even out. So I'm focusing most of the paint in the center, and I'll spread it out after. As I was pouring this cup, I noticed it's very green. I'm not seeing my neutral colors. I was hoping that maybe that was just a fluke with that cup, but as I began to pour this cup as well, I can barely see any of that camel color. So that was because I made it too thick. Compared to the other 4 colors, it was a lot more thick. And now it's sinking down and disappearing completely. We still have some beautiful, vibrant colors, but it's too bad that none of those neutral colors ended up showing through. So I'm just doing nice, thin lines. I want this piece to be very detailed. So I'm doing many, many lines. Now I have all my acrylic paint mixture on the canvas, and I'm noticing there's a lot of bubbles, a lot more than I get with floetrol. I'm trying to torch some of them out with my kitchen torch here. Not too close, I don't want to burn any of the paint. And now it's time to spread. We'll see how this GAC 800 spreads across the base layer. And I'm already noticing as I pour, it's not as smooth as floetrol. Some of those lines are looking a little bit jagged, but the colors are nice and vibrant. So I'm just gonna finish pouring over all of the edges, and we will take a closer look at the final results. I'm also noticing there's still quite a bit of small air bubbles, but let's take a closer look. So here the paint is still wet, but the colors are looking nice and vibrant. It's too bad that camel color has completely disappeared, but that's my fault for making it too thick. Now let's take a look at the piece when it is completely dry. And here we have it. It's dried a little bit darker, which is typical for acrylic paint. The colors have definitely maintained their vibrancy. I will be going over a more detailed review of the GAC 800. I'll be rating it and comparing it to the other pouring mediums in an upcoming video. So thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye.